business story. The banks and other financial institutions are now required to publish names of willful loan defaulters twice a year in the national dailies. This is part of new measures rolled out by the Bank of Ghana to help check high non-performing loans in the country. Judge Wiafe has more in this report.
The commercial banks and other regulated financial institutions are expected to publish the names of these willful loan defaulters on June 30 and 31st of December of each year, and at least in 2 dailies with a national circulation in the country. These financial institutions are also expected to put the names of these persons on their website. They are also expected to forward them to the various security agencies and the Financial Intelligence Center. These loan defaulters could be barred from accessing credit from the financial system for the next 5 years. The directive is part of several measures to deal with some of these recalcitrant individuals that have contributed to the high non-performing loans in the country. The individuals should also be stopped from taking new loans. The measures have taken off, and all the financial institutions in the country should ensure that at the end of next year, their ratio to non-performing loans should have reduced to about 10%.
Now, my colleague George Wiafe has joined me in studio for analysis on this. Now, some people have described these measures as very tough. Why is the Bank of Ghana basically going that way, George?
Why the Bank of Ghana is going? That's $1 billion question a lot of people are asking. But if you realize that if loans that, for instance, the banks fear would not be paid back on time, has gone as high as, 21 in terms of the total industry ratio, that should be a concern for you. If the regulator is worried about how people's ability not to pay back their debt on time is impacting on the ability of financial institutions to grant fresh loans, that is a problem for them. If that is also affecting some financial institutions in terms of threatening their existence, it appears the Bank of Ghana has gone through this, and that is why they are pushing some of these drastic measures for the banks to implement. Let me bring you more on the rationale behind it. So the high-performing loans is a problem for them, and it's impacting on the banking industry. Also, you can talk about protecting the financial system against bank collapse. Now, if more people are taking loans from banks and they don't want to pay back deliberately, these are, they call something financial intermediation. I take money from you, I lend to the cameraman there. It's a cycle. If one person breaks that cycle, it has an impact on that financial institution, and it has an impact on that bank paying you back that money. And that is why Bank of Ghana think that if they don't check this thing, it could have an impact on bank collapse. Also, ensuring the reduction in cost of credit and interest rates. One of the reasons, or this is often factored in the pricing of loans, the inability of high-performing loans is affecting the pricing of new loans to people. And Bank of Ghana also wants to do something about that. Also, ensuring sustained profitability of industries, liquidity and solvency. If a bank, until they brought in these recent requirements where you cannot give more than a percentage of your total wealth to an individual, you realize that this high non-performing loan is also impacting a lot of financial institutions in the country. Yeah. And therefore, Bank of Ghana is looking at all these things, and they are saying that they have to move fast with some of these measures that are seen as quite draconian and tough to save the financial industry.
Interesting. Before we get to the fine details, who would you say is a willful loan defaulter?
It's interesting because you could it's a very interesting thing, because when you look at the definition of what apart from the talking about who's a willful what do you call it? Defaulter. Yeah. That is a very interesting thing. Now, you're talking about a situation where the Bank of Ghana is saying that if this person, maybe Winston Taki,
yes,
has the ability to pay these loans back, and he's deliberately putting in certain excuses that he doesn't want to pay that loan back, you can't be classified as that willful loan defaulter. If that person also, through some means, submitted wrongful documents to actually get some of these loans from the financial institution, you can also be classified as a willful loan defaulter. If several attempts is being made by commercial bank A to get that money paid back, and you keep on changing your address. Today they come to Joy FM, they can't find you. They go to your house, they can't find you. Today they say you've traveled, you're sick and all the rest, and you're struggling. You can't be classified as that willful loan defaulter per these new regulations that the Bank of Ghana is rolling out.
Interesting. I see some of them will be banned.
So basically, your name, Winston Taki, if the bank says that you are a willful loan defaulter, it will be put in the national dailies that has a very wide circulation on the 30th of June and December 31, basically to ensure that everybody knows that you are a bad client. Don't forget that. So that is going to happen. Also, there could be the possibility, and I want to stress on this, and that you could be stopped from getting fresh loans from the financial system for 5 years until you take steps to pay that loan back.
Interesting. I hear the banks are not left out and the financial institutions as well.
Of course, if you go through as well, and talking about the banks are also not left out because it's a part of a broader directive as well. Some of these banks, and I use the word have very high non-performing loan ratio. So listen, if my information serves me right, and it has started, and we'll get Mr. John Dewar to clarify for that as well. It means that by the end of next year, you should have reduced your non-performing loans. So say loans that the banks fear will not be paid, because when you take a loan, that loan has to perform by settling that loan. If you are not settling that loan and it gets to a certain level, it can be classified as non-performing. These are just accounting purposes. It doesn't mean that that loan cannot be recovered, but there's a time that you have to pay these loans. And if you fail to pay these loans within that period, then it's classified as that before it gets to bad debt for it to be written off. So these banks, if by the end of next year they don't have their NPLs exceeding this 10%, there's a problem for you there. The Bank of Ghana is saying that from January 2027, you cannot pay bonus. You also cannot pay dividend if you are a listed company as well. And therefore, you should do all these things. Also, the Bank of Ghana is saying that because we have a problem with a chunk of your loan book being classified as non-performing loans, freeze, do not go ahead to grant fresh loans until you correct all these things. So apart from the Bank of Ghana trying to deal with individuals also, they are also targeting that financial institution. If you are a director of that bank and you go behind, come up with a new name and take a loan from that bank, and you also don't want to pay, they would also be targeting you as well per all these directives that they've actually put out in the next slide. In the next slide as well. So these are some of the measures that they've actually outlined to try and bring the situation under control.
Thank you very much, George, for this insightful analysis. We appreciate you bringing out this information. And certainly, we're still having this conversation. Let's get on to Zoom and speak to the Chief Executive of the Ghana Association of Banks, Mr. John Dewar. Welcome to the marketplace, sir. Now, before we get into these measures, how will you describe yesterday's engagement with the Bank of Ghana Governor?
Thank you very much for having me. It was fruitful, and as you stated in your opening remarks, that it's just one of the ways that we engage the central bank right after the MPC deliberations. We then, the central bank or the governor will call a meeting with all heads of banks, and we discuss the results of the MPC or the outcome of the MPC meetings and matters of mutual benefit to the banking sector generally, and also in the financial services as an industry. So yesterday's engagement was very engaging, and it was really fruitful. Came up with quite a number of suggestions. The governor, in his usual manner, also likes to listen to the banks a lot. So we also laid before him some of the challenges that we are facing as an industry, which he is committed to also helping us to address.
How prepared are your members to comply with these new directives by the central bank governor?
As banking sector, it's a very highly regulated environment. So you comply or you die. Compliance is in our DNA. So we ensure that before directives come, we work with the central bank for our views to be reflected in whatever notices or directives are coming. So behind the scene, before this directive came, the draft came to us, We also, constituted a committee to go through, and some of the suggestions that we recommended have been factored into the final document. Obviously, it's not everything that you want that you have. So there are others that we would have wished would have been in place before the release. But all in all, once it has come from the central bank, our job is to comply.
Was there some success based on a deliberation to ensure the dollar supply to some commercial banks?
Yeah, it was one of the key items that we discussed. A lot of the discussions at this stage are still at the discussion stage, and I would prefer that we get to the point where we can go public with some of the decisions that the governor working with the banking industry will be coming out with.
Great. Let's try and concentrate on the non-performing loan measures. Have some, possibly some have described it as very tough, and could it affect lending subsequently or eventually?
Non-performing loans generally is more or less like a cancer to the banking system. If you lend and your likelihood of recovery is around 80%, which means that you are potentially going to lose about 20% of whatever amount that you give out as loans, it reduces your ability to recover, your ability to meet your commitments, and your ability to even do more financial intermediation. And to those out there who know people who intentionally or willfully default, you should know that as default rate goes up, the depositors' funds are also largely being put at risk. And the banks are trading with money they have mobilized, and it's our duty to ensure that when we give out these monies as loans, we get them back, so that when depositors make demand, they can also have their money back. So it's a chain, and anyone who comes in between the chain to frustrate the resilience of that chain is causing great damage, and default is a big stress in that chain.
Before I let you go, I want to understand from you, how some of your members, in terms of percentage-wise, how many of your members have begun reducing their lending rate based on the current adjustment in the rates, basically?
With the reduction in the Ghana reference rate.
Exactly, the reference rate, yes.
Following the drop in the policy rates and where T-bill and interbank rates are, it's not a matter of choice for a bank, because the reference rate is more or less what we used to call the base rate, is the Ghana reference rate. And the Ghana reference rate has reduced from upwards of 23.5 or thereabout to 19.67. So on the baseline, without doing anything at all, that should reflect in any new lending that banks are going to give or are giving, or any variable rate loans that are out there that are benchmarked to the reference rate.
It's been noted that some of these loan defaulters, basically on the MPL, are directly linked to government, and basically you get to find them to be more of the contractors, road contractors and that. But why is there this punitive measure being put in place, I guess?
And that is where we have greater concern. In the directive, the governor goes on to say that banks will ensure that for facilities or loans that have been written off, we enter into full-scale recovery, disposing of assets that are available, which the Borrowers and Lenders Act at 1052 gives the banks the right to do. Unfortunately, banks are confronted whenever they make attempts to go through the provisions in the Act 1052 by going to the courts. And surprisingly, they are accommodated within the court system. So what we had said was, these are very good directives. But what about first dealing with the underlying problems within the court system, within the judiciary, which is also stressing the bank's ability to recover from distressed assets. So we are putting a lot of effort in one area, which is on the banks and also on the recovery part, but the enablers that will ensure that banks are able to, when they enter into recovery mode, to get their money back are not really being tackled. As banks, we have taken that step. Last year, we sponsored a refresher program for all the commercial court justices, all of them, on a refresher on the Borrowers and Lenders Act. because we want them. They are lawyers and senior lawyers who have now become judges. And they understand the law. Me, I'm not a lawyer. But even as a layman, when I read the law, it tells me what I should do when there's default. When I do it and someone comes to your court, you should tell the person they are within their rights per Act 1052 to do what they are doing. So go and pay the loan. When you do that to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the recalcitrant borrowers, we are sending the message. And again, to the point you made, government is a huge part of the economy of Ghana. And when a contractor says, I've done job, I'm not being paid, it's not a contractor who is not being paid. But the funding for the contractor to mobilize to sites would have been provided by a bank. So it is actually a bank who are the silent sufferers when contractors or government counterparties are not getting the settlement that they have been promised. So it is, it takes all the key players within the architecture to work together to improve the credit environment. So the non-performing loan rates will come down to even below the 10% that the prudential limit is advising us to conform to.
Mr. Johnny, we appreciate your time here on the marketplace. Now, indeed, the non-performing loan ratio keeps increasing, and that has become a disturbing phenomenon for the banks. Moving on, IC Research has forecast Ghana's fiscal deficit may end 2025 at 3.9% of gross domestic product, higher than the 3.8% projected by the government. The following report has more.
According to IC Research, a leading economic research firm, the government's commitment to sustain expenditure rationalization measures in the second half of 2025 while driving revenue growth will trigger this. In its assessment of the 2025 mid-year budget review, IC Research said the strong restraint on expenditure in the first half of 2025 has significantly eased its concerns about the near-term fiscal outlook. Despite the compression in the overall deficit target, the government surprisingly left the target primary surplus unchanged at 1.5% of GDP. IC Research said its analysis revealed that the unchanged fiscal anchor for 2025 reflects an unexpected upsurge in energy sector obligation by 2.9 billion cedis to 30 billion cedis for 2025, with 94.1% of the increase already paid in the first half of 2025.
We have more business update for you right after this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Marketplace Live on the Joy News channel. My name is Winston Taki. Now, the Global Managing Attorney General, Attorney Sarah Anko, is advising small and medium enterprises to register their trademarks in the specific classes that cover their goods and services, warning that a single registration won't protect every product a business offers. Speaking on the Joy Business Masterclass, she explained that registering a company name is not the same as protecting its product, and that each product or service must be registered in its relevant category to avoid brand theft, legal disputes, and costly court battles.
When it comes to trademarks, it's the protection here is even stronger in the sense that when you have a registered trademark in a particular class, nobody can use anything close to that name in that particular space. So we have classifications for these goods and services. You have, in your case, you have Joy for a service. I can have water production called Yao Water, sorry. You can have something like that, and then you call, that name will be registered for that particular class. So as an SME, if you are producing, let's say, water, juice, and at the same time you are manufacturing laptops, you are manufacturing cars or any other, these goods fall in different classes. So if, for instance, you have X juice and you have registered it within the class for juices, the X will not protect your cars or your computers, which fall under the same company. You will still have to register the X for those goods and services. Probably you have this juice, and at the same time you have a restaurant. In the restaurant, you are providing a service, so you have to register the mark for the service as well. You don't leave that, otherwise that the mark in respect of that particular service will not be protected.
So if I understand it clearly, the registration for the company differs from the registration for the various products.
Definitely. No products,
Or
your
should I say-
trademark. So your
Right.
trademark rather goes with, let's say, your brand identifier.
Right. Okay.
How we recognize you
Right.
on the market. So you may have a name for it, or a logo,
Yeah.
or even a slogan, an identifier for your product or your goods or your services.
That'll be all for today on the marketplace. For more business update, visit myjoyonline.com/business. And it appears people have become more of Kilanchia. However, the central bank says willful loan defaulters face 5-year credit ban on the new BoG rules. World Bank projects 0.6% GDP revenue boost if Ghana fully implements 2025 tax measures. Yes, we have more of these insightful stories here on the Joy News channel. My name is Winston Target. Thanks for watching today's edition of the Marketplace. Have a good business day and stay focused and succeed.